You think they forgot you. You think your silence went unnoticed. But what if I told you? Silence is the one thing their ego can't handle. They scroll past your name, pretending they don't care. They tell themselves they've moved on. But every quiet night, when the noise fades, your absence echoes louder than any argument ever could. Silence exposes what pride tries to hide. It shows who truly has control, not the one who speaks the loudest, but the one who no longer needs to speak at all. In this video, we'll go deep into that quiet space, the place where dignity replaces desperation, where your stillness becomes strength. And where those who underestimated you begin to crumble under the weight of their own ego. Stay until the end, because there's one Stoic practice, nearly 2,000 years old, that turns heartbreak into calm power. And once you understand it, silence will never feel like weakness again. We live in a world where everyone's shouting online, at work, even in relationships. Everyone wants to win the last word, to prove they're right. But the Stoics, they mastered the art of restraint. They knew that not reacting is the highest form of response. When someone hurts you and you choose silence, it's not because you have nothing to say. It's because you finally understand that peace is more valuable than validation. Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." Your silence, then, is not surrender. It's mastery. It's how you reclaim your power without ever raising your voice. And what's more beautiful, they'll never admit it, but they'll feel it, because silence, in its purest form, doesn't shout. It echoes. Life today feels like a constant performance. Every gesture, every word, every silence is watched, judged, compared. We post, we reply, we explain ourselves endlessly, hoping someone will finally understand. But here's the truth the Stoics knew long before social media existed. The more you chase to be understood, the further you drift from peace. People today mistake noise for connection. They think constant communication means closeness, but often it's the opposite. Sometimes the deepest relationships are the ones where no words are needed, because silence has a language of its own, one only the calm can hear. This is why Stoicism isn't just philosophy. It's emotional self-defense. It teaches you how to stand still when everyone else is spinning. That's what this video is about. How your silence, your restraint, can become your greatest strength in a world addicted to reaction. We're going to look beyond the surface. This isn't about making someone miss you for the sake of pride. It's about understanding the psychology of silence and how ego collapses in its presence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He didn't mean detachment was cold. He meant that peace begins when you stop outsourcing your emotions to others, when you stop giving people the power to define how you feel. In the next few minutes, we'll explore what really happens when you pull away, how silence disarms manipulation, confuses ego, and exposes what's real. You'll learn how Stoic thinkers turned distance into wisdom, and how you can too, without bitterness, without hate, because the point isn't to win them back. It's to win yourself back. Before we dive deeper, I want to set one thing clear. This video isn't about revenge. It's not about playing mind games or waiting for an apology. That may never come. It's about choosing dignity over drama. There's a quiet revolution happening. People are tired of emotional chaos. They're tired of begging to be seen, of explaining their worth to those who never intended to listen. The Stoics understood that silence isn't withdrawal, it's evolution. It's the moment you stop explaining yourself and start observing who truly respects your peace. So here's what we'll cover. What really happens when you go silent? how their ego reacts, and why. What Stoic philosophy says about detachment, control, and freedom. And finally, the single practice that transforms silence into serenity. You are not here to disappear. You're here to reappear, stronger and untouchable. When you go silent, their ego panics when you go silent. The first thing they feel isn't guilt, it's confusion. Their ego, so used to feeding off your reactions, suddenly goes hungry. They replay old arguments, messages, moments where they felt powerful, but none of it brings relief anymore, because your silence breaks the pattern that kept them comfortable. They start asking themselves, did I go too far? Did I lose control? But the truth is, what they're really afraid of isn't losing you. It's losing the reflection of power they had when they could provoke you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote, "He who angers you conquers you. When you stop reacting, you remove the fuel that keeps their ego. Burning. Your silence doesn't punish them, it reveals them. It shows what's behind the mask. One's attention disappears. And that revelation terrifies the ego more than any confrontation ever could. We've all been there, staring at the phone, waiting for a message that never comes. In those quiet moments, your mind becomes the loudest thing in the room. You start wondering if silence means indifference. But to a Stoic, silence isn't absence, it's alignment. When you choose silence, you're not giving up. You're deciding that your peace is worth more than endless explanations that fall on deaf ears. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you keep feeding resentment, it stains you. But when you stop, when you simply breathe and let the noise fade, clarity returns." They might see your silence as weakness, but that's only because they can't survive without attention. Ego needs noise, peace doesn't. And that's why your stillness feels like power, because it is. In the modern world, silence scares people. We've been conditioned to think quiet means rejection. But to the wise, silence is a mirror. It shows you what you truly feel once distraction is gone. When someone loses your voice, they start hearing their own thoughts louder. And often, what they hear isn't pleasant. That's why they panic. That's why they chase. Not because they love you, but because they're terrified of facing themselves. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Your absence teaches more than your presence ever could, because in that space, their ego starts to collapse under its own weight, and your calm, your refusal to engage, becomes a lesson they didn't know they needed. People often mistake silence for pride. They say, "You're just being stubborn," or "You're too proud to speak." But they don't understand that silence can also be an act of healing. You're not trying to prove you're better. You're just done proving it all. Marcus Aurelius warned, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You've reached the point where words no longer matter, because you've already lived the answer. That's not pride. That's peace. Peace doesn't shout. It doesn't need validation or explanation. It simply exists, like still water, deep, quiet. UNBOTHRED. And the people who can find peace within themselves will always mistake yours for arrogance. When you choose peace, some people feel rejected. That's because they've mistaken your availability for dependence. But peace doesn't chase, it attracts. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself by walking away quietly." You prove that you can face the discomfort of being misunderstood and still remain calm. That's strength disguised as stillness. True peace isn't fragile. It doesn't need everyone to agree or approve. It's the steady flame that burns even when the wind howls. And once you've found that kind of peace, There's nothing left to defend. There's a strange beauty in restraint. In a world obsessed with reaction, silence becomes rebellion. When you stop explaining, you start observing. When you stop justifying, you start understanding. This is the moment the Stoics called ataraxia, the state of undisturbed calm. It's when you stop being controlled by other people's moods. Their chaos doesn't belong to you anymore. You'll know you found it when you can hear their insults and feel nothing but clarity, not anger, not pride, just peace, because you finally understand. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every noise deserves your reply. Your silence is not the end of a conversation, it's the beginning of your freedom. What happens when their ego collapses at first? They act like your silence doesn't matter. They post pictures, laugh louder, and surround themselves with noise, hoping it'll drown out the echo you left behind. But you can't fake peace. You can only delay the moment you face yourself. Eventually, the silence gets to them. The texts they never sent start replaying in their minds. The last thing you said begins to sound different, wiser, calmer, more final. Their ego, once inflated by your attention, now struggles to breathe in the emptiness. That's when confusion turns into reflection. They don't just miss your presence. They miss the version of themselves they could be around you. And for the first time, they realize it wasn't your noise they loved, it was your calm. But they only see it now, when it's gone. That's what ego collapse feels like, the shattering of an illusion that control ever existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." When their ego collapses, they begin to see truth without the filter of pride. They start remembering the times you forgave them, the patience you gave, the arguments you chose to walk away from. And it hits them. Silence was never punishment. It was grace. But grace, once taken for granted, becomes their greatest regret. They realize too late that silence wasn't distance. It was closure. The Stoics believed every action should align with virtue, not vanity. And when you chose silence, you practiced one of the highest virtues, self-control. While they fought to be right, you chose to be free. And now, your absence teaches what your words never could. It shows them the cost of ego, and the quiet dignity of letting go. When their ego finally collapses, something shifts. The performance ends. The mask cracks. They may reach out, not to reconcile, but to reassure themselves they still matter. That's not love speaking. That's fear. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And in that moment, you see the difference. They're still chained to pride, to perception, to the illusion of control. You, meanwhile, have learned the quiet discipline of detachment. You don't respond to prove you're strong. You stay silent because you are strong. Because strength isn't about winning someone back. It's about no longer needing to. That's the paradox of growth. The moment you stop trying to be understood, you become impossible to forget. And though they'll never admit it, they'll remember the sound of your silence long after the noise fades. They'll come back, not because they've changed, but because your silence made them curious. People driven by ego don't chase love. They chase control, and when they feel it slipping away, they test you. They'll text something vague. "Hey, just checking in," not out of care, but to see if you'll still respond. This is what the Stoics would call a test of attachment. Epictetus warned, "When someone provokes you, remember that it is your judgment which provokes you." They want to see if they still have that power, the power to make you react, to disturb your calm. But when you stay grounded, when you resist the bait, something magical happens. They realize your peace is no longer negotiable. They can't control what they no longer understand. That's when manipulation begins to lose its grip. Not because you fought it, but because you stopped playing. Modern relationships often mistake manipulation for connection. We confuse emotional intensity with depth, and control with care. But Stoicism flips that script. It teaches that real strength isn't loud. It's measured. When they test your boundaries, they're really searching for validation. Can I still get a reaction? Can I still shake them? And when you don't respond the way they expect, they feel lost, because their old strategies no longer work on the new you. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control what others do, but you can control what you tolerate. You can choose calm over chaos. Detachment isn't indifference. It's self-respect, and once you internalize the truth, silence stops being passive. It becomes your armor, invisible, yet unbreakable. There's a quiet kind of victory that comes when you no longer need to win. When you stop explaining, defending, or hoping they'll see the truth, you've already won. Because you've reclaimed your peace. The Stoic way isn't about ignoring others. It's about mastering yourself. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Every attempt at manipulation is just another test, a moment to refine your conduct so the next time someone tries to draw you into their drama. Remember, you don't owe them chaos. You don't have to prove your worth in the courtroom of their insecurity. Let them play their games alone. Because peace doesn't need an audience. And silence, when chosen from clarity, not fear, is the most eloquent response you'll ever give. Turning silence into strength. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels empty. It feels sacred. At first, it hurts. The quiet feels like rejection, like a void you're desperate to fill. But as time passes, that same silence becomes something else. Peace. You begin to realize that not every conversation needs closure. Not everyone needs to be explained. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's what you're learning. How to come home to yourself. Your silence is no longer about them. It's about you listening to what your heart has been trying to say all along. It says, "You've done enough. You've said enough. You are enough." And the moment you believe that, silence stops being loneliness. It becomes a sanctuary. One no one can take away. In silence, you discover how strong you really are. When no one texts, when no one checks in, and you still find calm. That's real power. The Stoics didn't chase noise. They practiced presence. They knew that every external voice fades, but the voice of reason, your inner guide, never leaves. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. We waste it trying to convince, to fix, to be seen." But when you embrace quiet, you start seeing clearly. You realize that peace was never lost. It was just buried under the noise of needing others to understand. That's why silence, when chosen, becomes strength. It doesn't demand attention. It commands respect. Because the calmest person in the room is always the one in control. And then something unexpected happens. You stop waiting. You stop replaying what went wrong, or wondering what they think. You wake up one day, look round, and realize you're okay. You survived what you once thought would destroy you. That's when silence transforms from a wall into a window. Through it, you start seeing the world again, not through pain, but through clarity. You laugh again, breathe again, love again, quietly, intentionally. And that quiet becomes your new rhythm. The Stoics call this eudaimonia, the state of living in harmony with virtue. Guided by inner peace, you're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're simply being. That, paradoxically, is what makes you unforgettable. Because while they're still trying to be seen, you've learned to be still, and in stillness, you found freedom. Let's pause for a moment. Take a breath. You've walked through the fire of silence, and somehow, you're still standing. Let's look back together. You learned that when you go silent, their ego begins to panic. Not because they miss you, but because they lose control. You discovered the line between pride and peace. That silence isn't arrogance. It's mastery. You saw what happens when ego collapses, the noise fades, and truth surfaces. You learned to see manipulation for what it is, a test, not a trap. And finally, you learned how to turn your quiet into power. Each of these moments wasn't about them. It was about you, about remembering your strength, your worth, and your stillness. Because silence, when guided by self-awareness, isn't emptiness. It's rebirth. Now think about this. Every time you held your tongue when you could have lashed out, every time you chose calm over chaos, every time you walked away instead of chasing closure, that was growth. Those moments felt heavy, but they were sacred. They shaped the person who's listening right now. Someone wiser, softer, and infinitely stronger. Marcus Aurelius said, "The obstacle is the way." Your pain, your silence, your restraint. They weren't detours. They were the path, and through that path, you learn something profound. Peace doesn't come when life gets easier. It comes when you stop giving your peace away so easily. You don't need them to miss you anymore, because the one who truly needed your attention was you. And now, you've finally shown up for yourself. So as we close, I want you to remember this. The people who once underestimated you, they'll think of you in quiet moments, not because you were loud, but because your absence spoke truth. But you won't linger there anymore. You'll be too busy building, living, creating, loving. Because silence is not just the end of noise. It's the beginning of depth. The Stoics never shouted for validation. They lived with intention, moved with grace, and spoke only when words added value. You're learning to do the same. So tonight, when everything feels still, don't fill the silence. Listen to it. It's your soul reminding you you've made it back to yourself. And that's where peace has always lived, waiting quietly for your return. They'll never admit it, but they miss you, not the version of you who argued, explained, or tried to fix everything. They miss the version who loved with calm, who gave without expecting, who stayed grounded when they spiraled. But that version of you didn't disappear. You simply brought it home, where it belongs. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When you rise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's what you have now. The privilege of peace. You no longer wake up hoping someone sees your worth. You wake up knowing it, and that quiet confidence, that's something their ego will never understand. Because true power doesn't announce itself. It simply radiates. If this message found you at the right time, take a deep breath. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're just finally learning how to live without noise. The Stoics didn't write to impress. They wrote to remind us that peace is a choice we make every single day. When we stop chasing and start trusting. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. So don't rush to text them. Don't try to prove you're healing. Just live it, quietly, steadily, consistently. And as you do, you'll notice something. People who once took you for granted will start seeing you differently. But by then, you won't need them to. Because your worth won't depend on who notices it anymore. It will depend on how deeply you protect it. If this video resonated with you, leave a quiet mark below, not for the algorithm, but for someone else who might need to read your words tonight. Share what silence has taught you. And if you'd like to keep growing through Stoic wisdom, subscribe to StoicCraft. Every week, we reflect on ancient truths from modern hearts, lessons on peace, self-control, and quiet strength in a world that never stops shouting. Hit like if this message reminded you of your power. And remember, silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of self. Let them miss you. Let them face their own silence. You just keep walking forward, because when you master silence, you don't lose people, you lose illusions, and that's where real freedom begins.